Hi everyone, this is Chycho. Welcome to my channel and welcome to another comic book reading. What we're going to do today is have a read through Joe Sacco's Palestine, issue number 1. And this comic book came out in 1993. It's the first issue of a 9-issue maxi series. Okay, and it's by Joe Sacco, which basically gave birth to comic book journalism. What we did before this reading was, because we're doing this on a live stream, we read through the foreword by scholar Edward Said. And if you're interested in sort of a background, what Edward Said had to say, I highly recommend looking up that little segment as well, because I will be loading it up as a separate video, because I think it deserves its own sort of standalone read. It's sort of a 5 pages of Edward Said's thoughts regarding Joe Sacco's Palestine. Okay. And this book is put out by Fantagraphics books, one of the greatest independent comic book publishers in history. Phenomenal, 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 right? Let's crack this open and take a nice look at the cover, because that way the glare will be gone. And this comic is, I would say it's in fine plus, very fine, very fine condition. Okay, just from the cover, we'll take a look at it, see if we can focus it. It's very hard to find this comic in very high grade. The other copy that we have, I have another copy in very fine condition. But this one I would say is fine, very fine, maybe even very fine minus, depending on what we find on the back. Yeah. What is this? Let's take a look. Let's see what's written back here. In this issue, romantic arithmetic in Cairo, a perfect guest of Palestine, discussing terrorism on a date, return to Jerusalem, a history lesson, those sexy Israeli soldiers, demonstration and counter demonstrations, ripped off in the valley of Kidron. Palestinian victims of right. All right, the life adaptation of all those of affidavits I've been reading, the flesh and blood stuff, up close and almost personal. But it's time for me to go. This is going to be a panel or a splash page inside the comic. Let's keep on reading it. Now he's thanking my ass. He's touched. I've come all this way. This is Joe Sacco right here, by the way, gang. Okay. You write some things about us. I showed you. You saw. You tell about us. The guy says. And there's kids all around them. Of course. I'm off to fill my notebook. I will alert the world to your suffering. Watch your local comic book store. I walk back to where the taxis are waiting. Mission accomplished. Told you I was good at this. Joe Sacco's Palestine is a documentary comic book that see if we can get this thing focused. The sun is coming out. That walks the line between two sides with a measure of sympathy and a measure of caricature. For each, I hope he survives to do Palestine #2. Larry Connick, creator of the cartoon History of the Universe. Very cool. Sacco's use of the language of comics is fluent, articulate, and even mildly revolutionary. He's one of the comic book industry's best cartoonists, and Palestine looks like it will be his most satisfying work yet. Chester Brown, creator of Yummy Fur. Haha. Very cool. Very cool. Palestine by Joe Sacco. Let's take a look. What is this? Editor Kim Thompson, art director Jim Blanchard, color separation Robert Gregory, promotion Larry Feed, circulation Kingsford and Kresney, published by Groth and Thompson. Palestine #1, February 1993. Palestine is published quarterly by Fantagraphic Books Incorporated and is copyright 1992 Fantagraphic Books Incorporated. All stories and artwork copyright Joe Sacco. No part of this magazine may be reproduced without written permission from Fantagraphic Books or Joe Sacco. Letters to Palestine become the property of the magazine and are assumed intended for publication in whole or in part, and may therefore be used for those purposes. First printing December 1992. Subscription to 2 to 7 available for $15 from the publisher. Fantagraphic Books, 7563 Lake City Way, Seattle, Washington 98115. Single copies of this issue available for $3. Right for a complete catalog of other Fantagraphic magazine comic books. Cool. There's Joe Sacco looking out. Right. So he's in Cairo right now, Egypt. Let's check it out. Traffic. I'm swallowing exhaust and my snot's gone black. And noise. Car horns are what Egyptians have instead of home entertainment centers. What a town. Crazy. 15 million heads with their chickens cut off. And between pyramids and boy pharaohs, I'm zonked. I'm spinning. Taxi. Get me out of here, he says. There's Joe Sacco right there, drinking away. Let's take a look at some of this art. Look at that. Just chaos. I pull up 2 chairs. I take a load off my feet. I'm hanging with the hotel receptionist. It's quieter and the talks turn philosophical. There are Muslims and there are Muslims. And Sharif is a Muslim in love. Violins, please. A woman from Prague. A 2-day sci-fest. Candlelit and Nile cruises. Up the Cairo Tower for God knows what amount. In 2 days he blew 500 Egyptian pounds. Best of all, They didn't even do the nasty. Taha is beside himself with arithmetic. 600% of your monthly wage, half a year pay in 2 days. I love her, he says. You are drinking to forget. She said she will leave her husband for me, her children. Oh no. She says she loves me now. 500 pounds. Ha ha ha. Who's been there? Who's been there? Sharif looks to me. I am Westerner. I will understand. I will meet her in Europe someday, he says. He wants to leave Egypt, so that makes two of us. I want a visa for Israel. Israel? I have no problem with the Israelis. They are like Europeans, Sharif says. Oh, I would smash Israel. I would smash Israel. Oh. Let's check this out. Oh boy. I'm in the Middle East. For the Jews to be treated the way they've been treated, and then to treat the Palestinians in that way. And it's not that they want to live there, they want to grab and grab. Well, what about Camp David? Sadat in Jerusalem, the hugs from Benjamin. Ha! Oops, pardon me. Sadat was a very intelligent man. He knew Israel was strong then, but in 50 years, Sadat had a plan. Taha unwinds Sadat's plan. It's a little convoluted. I don't quite follow the tank tactics. Meanwhile, Sharif has compiled a list of his favorite rock. Barclay James Harvest. Oh my God. Barclay, I know Barclay James Harvest is they're fantastic. Barclay James Harvest, Pink Floyd, George Michael, Deep Purple, Deep Purple. See that? He's changed the conversation. That's what he knows how to talk about. Apologies about interrupting this, but Barclay James Harvest. Wow, wow. The guy has good taste. How much do you spend on books? I am a poor man and I spend 30 pounds a month on books, and you spent 500 pounds on her in 2 days. She loves me. Love, ha! She would leave her children? He asks. A couple days later, I get my visa and I leave Cairo. Across the Suez and into the Sinai, we pass tanks twisted and burnt out since when? 73, 67, 56. The bus stops a lot. The bus drivers jumping out to have words with each other and the escort. It's a long way to Palestine and slow going, but I've been speeding, man. I've been speeding. I'm already there. There they are. Blind dates. Blind dates. 3 weeks later, I'm good at this. Watch his reaction, because here I am in the old city of Nablus, and we both know I don't belong. Now watch this. Salam alaikum. That's Joe Sacco. Salam alaikum, he says. Look at him. Peace be with you. He's got to respond alaikum salam, and peace be with you. That's the interpretation. Nah, I've got him, he says. See, he calls me over. He wants to practice his English. He wants to know what I'm doing here, what I think of his country, and well, I drink tea. Tea, seriously sugared. Oops. Hospitality measured by the lump, but I'm gracious. Love tea. A perfect guest of Palestine. He's rubbing his hands together. Cool. Let's see the whole page. But what do you think of my country? Back to that again. Are we? Okay. The hills is not what he's fishing for. The olive trees? But I'm a charmer. The terraced fields? A real innocence. And, by the way, not with Israeli intelligence. Haha. Just having a conversation. But in case he hasn't heard, what's he whispering? The occupation thing looks pretty harsh. He whispers, whammo. I've committed myself now. I'm no longer beating about the bush. I've hit his nail on the head too. Yes. The restaurant owner says, yes. But what can we do? Indeed. My point precisely. You've got my sympathies, and look at the girl. Okay, maybe that ain't saying much. Sympathy can be lots of hot air. I'll give you my own, for instance, from years ago when I was in Berlin talking with Claudia about Klinghoffer, and by then I'd come far. I figured the Palestinians ought to have a state of their own, to fuck up for themselves just like everybody else. And does his name ring a bell? Who is this? Klinghoffer, American Jew, on a pleasure cruise with his wife and their friends, Genoa, Naples, Alexandria. After Port said he was shot in the head by the Palestinian Liberation Organization, thrown in the water, dumped dumped with his wheelchair into the Mediterranean. Yeah, I remember this, or I read about it. And by the way, I was in love with Claudia. I'd been swooning for swooning for months, bidding my time too. I was bursting with the expectation of overripe Euro romance. You got to understand the American media, they want human interest. Klinghoffer gets killed and we get the full profile, the breathing widow, where he lived and what he put on his cornflakes till he sounds like the guy next door who borrows your ladder. You see the power of that? That's Sacco. That must be Claudia. It was far into the AM. We'd been drinking, and Claudia, who was half Iraqi, who'd studied Arabic in Damascus, where she'd left her Palestinian Romeo, whose brother in the where she Palestinian Damascus, she left her Palestinian Romeo, whose brother in the PLO was on first names with Yasser. Claudia may or may not have said something of interest at that point. You better believe it, I did. So he's going off. Americans won't care about the problems of Palestinians when Americans get killed in these terrorist attacks. One American dies like that, it eclipses anything Palestinians have to say. Sacco says, well, I don't know much about these things. Claudia replies, I knew she did, but conversation over. A peck on the cheek and I went home alone. Oh, wrong conversation, Sacco. To have with a lady that knows what's going on. Palestinian boyfriend, ha, bitch, terrorist, groupie. Boom. That's the plane. Unfair, you bet, but I couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. Terrorism is the bread Palestinians get buttered on. I'd swallowed that ever since the airliners went sky high in the desert. Do you remember that? Do you remember Munich and the blown up athletes, the bus and airport massacres? I do. My mind gurgles over with televised pools of blood. I mean, sure, I had sympathy for a homeland lost, but what were the problems of the Palestinians to me? Problems of the Palestinians to me, next to Klingenhof, who ate brand X cornflakes and probably borrowed my ladder. He went over the side of the Achilles Laro and into my conscience. And if Palestinians have been sinking for decades, expelled, bombed, and kicked back in black and blue, even when it's made the evening news, I never caught a name or recall a face, to say nothing about their cornflakes. But now my buddy on the West Bank wants to make some introduction to set me up He wants me to shake hands with his people's pain. The kids in the background. This woman, she has 8 children. Her husband, very old, very sick. The government gives her nothing. This one, his father is in prison. How long is in prison? 4 years. This one, his son is killed by soldiers. He won't stop. Don't mind. This one, his son is in prison. This one, 2 sons in prison. Ah, this was on the back cover that we looked at. Right. Let's read it again. Right. Palestinian victims, all right. The real life adaptation of all those affidavits I've been reading. The flesh and blood stuff, up close and almost personal. But it's time for me to go. Now he's thanking my ass. He's touched. I've come all this way. You're right. You write some things about us. I showed you. You saw. You tell about us. Of course, I'm off to fulfill my notebook. I'm off to fill my notebook. I will alert the world to your suffering. Watch your local comic book store. I walk back to where the taxis are waiting. Mission accomplished. Told you I was good at this. The guy's laughing in the back, or grinning in the background. Smile. Stay true to his word. He did tell the story. In Jerusalem, I made pals with an American Jew. The sun's coming out and the light's changing. So, in Jerusalem, I made pals with an American Jew named David. He was taking time out of his kibbutz experience to sightsee the holy city. Really cool at night, don't you think? Yeah, amazing. Kind of funny. Kind of funny being here at the Western Wall, getting into my heritage. On Friday, I had Shabbat dinner with this Orthodox rabbi originally from New York. Yeah? How did it go? Interesting, he says. Return. Actually, I wasn't brought up religious. I wasn't even bar mitzvahed. Let's go in there. There's these shafts that go all the way to the original level of the wall. That's the Wailing Wall, I guess. Deep, huh? It goes down, down. Like the feelings you can get for the city. It's hard to see the bottom. And then we read the text. God, Joshua 1:3. quote, next year in Jerusalem, end quote. All over the world, that's the Jewish toast at Passover. And now here he is, a Jew in Zion, a land promised by God to his chosen people. Every place that the sole of your feet will tread upon, I have given to you, as I promised Moses. From the wilderness and this Lebanon, as far as the great river Euphrates, all the land of the Hittites to etc. Greater Israel they want. Oh, Balfour Declaration is it? And in 1917, after 2 millennia of Jewish diaspora, the British dusted off the promise of the Lord. Great powers had big battleships back then, broad pen strokes too, and plenty of India ink. Lord Balfour, signed his declaration, and the Zionists had a British commitment to a homeland in Palestine for the Jews. A land without a people for a people without a land. The propaganda. Lord Balfour again. The great catastrophe coming up, I guess. But things weren't as cut and dry as that Zionist slogan. Plenty of Arabs lived in Palestine in 1917. Arabs outnumbered Jews inhabitants 10 to 1, but you know, mathematics, it doesn't always fit into the equation. Zionism, be it right or wrong, good or bad, is rooted in age-long tradition, in present needs, in future hopes, of far profounder import than the desire and prejudices of 700,000 Arabs who now inhabit that ancient land. Lord Balfour. And incidentally, we do not propose even to go through the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country. Decision made, history follows on such heels, and refugees after that. But if it's been downhill for Palestinians ever since, Israelis have soared to greater heights. Who can deny it? Come over, see for yourself, like these kids, the international student set, the hostels crawling with them, Dutch, Australian, South African, they're on their way to kibbutzim. They're gonna get communal. They're gonna pick oranges in Galilee or the Negev. Some who've already done their stint sit around trading vomit stories, especially the English, who won't call it a holiday unless they're puked every night. They say there's nothing to do on them farms after sundown except plow vodka. But Mary Ann, the Argentine, hasn't been boozed. She's just come off a 3-week volunteer for Israel program. You mean with the Israeli army scrubbing tanks? It's not just that. It helped me understand the culture. Israel needs a strong army. It's surrounded by enemies, the guy says. I think it's so wonderful how young Israelis have such a sense of their country, of their identity. I think it's a beautiful thing, she says. And where are you from? She asks. Dave's got to think about it. A weekend in the holy city, and now he's not sure. Israel and America. Well, actually, I'm an American, but this feels like home to me. I am home. I am home. I am home, he says. And so he is. He's got full Israeli citizenship if he wants. That's the law of return. Any Jew from anywhere can return, quote in quotation marks here, from Moldova, from Ethiopia, from Christchurch, New Zealand. Weeks later, in Jabali refugee camp, I met an old Palestinian who told me about the home he fled in 1948 after Israel declared independence and the Arab armies invaded. The Jews came and occupied the village and arrested everyone left behind, including my father, who was an old man and couldn't move. I walked with my wife, who was pregnant for 4 days. Pregnant for 4 days. The Egyptian army refused to take us in trucks. The Jews bombed us. Even the ants ran after us. It was a black day when I left my land, he says. He returned as it were a few years ago. He got a permit from the Israeli authorities. For a few hours he could leave the Gaza Strip. He could cross into what is now Israel to visit his home village. I took my family to see my land, where my house was, and my school. Some people are paralyzed after they have a chance to go back and see. Leveled. They destroyed everything. There's no sign that we ever lived here. Jerusalem's city with firepower, the automatic rifle to shoulder ratio, the highest I've ever seen. But at least the Israelis put females in the ranks, which takes the edge off for an aesthetic like me. And as an international jet setter with an opportunity, if not a mandate, to compare such things, I would place Israeli women way high in the global hot looks sweepstakes, and in uniform, particularly those olive green pullovers. They're peerless. Every now and then, I can't help it, I slink up Jaffa Road for an eye full of off-duty teenage cuties, just to remind myself how basely I'm aging. Eye of the beholder. And what about the boys? Oh la la. I mean, look at this dude. He's taking 5 on the old city ramparts, gazing over annexed Arab land, doing a weak welcome to Marlborough country. Even I'm pressing my legs together. Hey, you American? The soldier asked the girl. Yeah, you. You want part of a sandwich? Uh, where are you guys from? Oh my god. Is she nervous or plain stupid? Either way, our soldiers our soldiers takes it in a stride. We're from Israel. Got that straight. Now come on. Let's salvage this flirtation. Hiya, fellas. Is that Sacco? That is Sacco coming in. Hiya, fellas. No, it's a lady. Too late. Mom and pops arrive. Extinguishes all hope. Sheesh. Looks like mom's a little smitten herself. Betcha she's never had beefcake like this on her Fuji color. It's taking pictures. How old are you boys? You shouldn't be smoking. Hold it. It's dangerous for your health, she says. You can get cancer. Hold on. Girl's not impressed. Hey, there's a lot of people down there. Is something going on? I want to interject. I read all about it this morning, didn't I? There's Sacco right there. Right. That was from the front, back of the front cover. It's Silwan, an all Arab village. A week ago, Jewish settlers booted out several Palestinian household, moved in, rolled out the barbed wire, set up the Star of David, and with Uzis and the Attorney General's green lit, who's gonna argue? Something's always going on, the soldier says. Huh. Stealing people's homes. And that's why I'm here, to see what's going on. So I walk down through Dungate. I walk straight into democracy. Look at that. Peace now. A demonstration, a counter demonstration. A sweet sigh for a right to assembly, not like me. Also, I'm a free speech junkie. Peace now. What does that say? Peace now, traders. Peace now, traders now. Free speech junkie. And this is Israel. Okay, annexed land, but let's skip it. It's the Middle East's only democracy, and there's both sides of the settler issue for consideration. Stop all the settlements. Stop the settlements. Negotiate, the signs say. By far the more numerous end of this afternoon, numerous end of this afternoon's political spectrum is the Peace Now crowd. They've bust in from all over Israel to express solidarity with the Palestinians of Silwan. I fall in with one of them. Stop all the settlements. Negotiate now. Maybe these settlers did it legally. I don't know, but that's not the point. It's a provocation. That's obvious. And right when peace talks are starting up. Sure, they say Israel should get out of the occupied territories and there ought to be a Palestinian state. And if it doesn't happen in the next 10 years, it'll be in 20 or 30. Meanwhile, like most able-bodied Israeli men, up till late middle age, he is required to do several weeks a year in the reserves, including duty in the West Bank. How do you reconcile your political views with being a member of an occupying army? Sacco asked. I know people who refuse to serve there and went to jail, but it's good there. There are guys like me in. Arabs in the territories don't get justice, but if I report some hothead soldier who does something illegal, that sets the wheels in motion. He could get in trouble, expelled from the army, heavy punishment for a guy that makes the army his life. The democracy continues around us. It's a pretty day for a peaceful peace now demonstration. And by the way, let's make one thing clear. Look, I am a Zionist and I believe in a strong Israel. It's because we're strong the Arabs have given up on throwing us into the sea. They're ready to negotiate now. A little later, the democracy all but over. People are heading back home to watch themselves on TV. Palestinian kids go through the crowd, sweet talking peace now protester out of their signs. I'm halfway up the hill when I hear shouting. A mini demonstration. What's this? A mini demonstration, maybe 50 people, some kids, some women. Stop settlements, negotiate now. They march a few dozen yards, chanting their heads off, raising more decibels in 2 minutes than I've heard all afternoon. I mean, they're screaming like their lives depended on it. It's their homes that they're stealing, right? Valley of Kidron. Hello, hello, Jewish? Me? No, not Jewish. Come, you come. Down there? You got to be kidding. Yes. Come. You speak Jewish? No, Sacco says. Nice. You speak Jewish? No. Okay. Okay, I know some words. Shalom, kibbutz, Knesset. The chubby kid says he's from Silwan. He says settlers kicked him out, his family. They came to your home? What did they say? Out, go. He motions like he's been hit. Where do you stay now? Him stays with him. Jewish. Hatu. Come. he says. Follow him. Come, come. There goes Sacco. House, a settlement? Jewish. He's pointing to settlers. Hey, it's kind of muddy out here, Sacco says. What are they doing? Let's take a look. Then birds up a tree. The boys turn to scoop stones. They want to bust the birds' brains in. The birds make their getaway and the boys don't notice. But there's no stopping them. They scoop fire, scoop fire, scoop fire, scoop fire. Nice kids, you know, but they're beginning to bore me. I say my goodbyes and money. Money? 10 shekels? But I thought we were friends. He's looking around. We show you. But you didn't say for money. Look at, here's 3.5. No, they say. They won't take it. They close my fist over the coins. Here. Oh, they go in his wallet. 10. 5 me, 5 him. But this isn't fair, Sacco says. I cop off a few more coins. They let me go. We are bad. You think I tell them they're bad? You think I tell them off? Those little terrorists. After that artillery display? Fucking kids. The fat bastard especially. Probably wasn't from Silwan. Probably ripped me on that too. Goddamn pipsqueaks. Assholes. Goddamn. Sacco's pissed. Back in Jerusalem's old city, I walk by Palestinian shopkeepers. They get me sick. Their big, sad eyes, their empty pockets. I want to kick them. Shake hands. Fat chance, buddy. I know that bullshit from Cairo. See? He doesn't want peace. What's this part? Let's take a look at this. Cartoonist note. So Joe Sacco's notes. I spent 2 months in Jerusalem and the occupied territories researching for Palestine in the winter of 1991-1992, and this series should be read with that context in mind. At that time, for example, Yitzhak Shamir was Israel prime minister, and his policy had been to quote push ahead strongly end quote with Jewish settlements on occupied Arab land. At this writing, Yitzhak Rabin is prime minister, and he has promised to restrict settlements, though not in annexed quote greater Jerusalem end quote, and not including 10,000 housing units whose completion he has authorized. It remains to be seen whether the lot of the Palestinians in the occupied territories improves under Rabin's government. Certainly, despite the current peace talks, there appears to be no end in sight to the occupation itself. I am including a map and a very brief historical overview for your information. There's the West Bank. And it's like full of settlements now. Like it's Swiss cheese. And there's a Gaza Strip basically leveled now in 2024. 200,000 plus murdered, genocide taking place, right? Jabala, there's the cities: Jabala Beach, Gaza. That's Gaza City. Nosia, Kanyang, Rafah. Rafah is where they've been sending a lot of the refugees from the north, and they're still bombing refugee centers, right? The Dead Sea: Hebron, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Jericho, Kalandia, Ramallah, Nablus, Balata, Jenin, Torkam. And obviously war up there. What does that little note say? Israeli security zone. Golan Heights annexed by Israel. That's Syrian land. Let's read the history. Must be done. Background: the existence of the Hebrew tribes in Palestine, the covenant between their tribal god Yahweh and Abraham, and the periods of Hebrew kingdoms formed the biblical and historical foundations for the Jewish claim to Palestine. After the expulsion by the Romans in the 2nd century, the Jews in the diaspora sometimes flourished and sometimes suffered severe persecution. The Greek massacres of Jews in the Russian pogroms and the official anti-Jewish sentiment evident during the Dreyfus case in France convinced many Jews in the late 1800s to work for a separate Jewish homeland. Chief among the advocates of the Jewish nationalism or Zionism was Theodor Herzl, who sought the backing of a major European powers for his cause. This was achieved by the Zionists in 1917 when the British government called for the establishment of the Jewish homeland in Palestine. Britain, of course, had its own strategic interest in mind in setting up a friendly presence in the region, but after the First World War, when the British gained the mandate to administer Palestine, they found themselves increasingly hard-pressed to control the forces they had set in motion. For one thing, they also had made written promises regarding independence for Arab areas. For another, increasing Jewish immigration, facilitated by Zionist groups, was being opposed by and reinforcing the nationalistic sentiments of Arab Palestinians who had lived in the land for generations. Zionist purchases of land from absentee landowners, displacement of Palestinian peasants, and refusal to hire Palestinian labor led to tension and violence that culminated in the Arab Revolt of 1936 to 1939, which the British crushed. A series of reassessments of policy and moves to limit Jewish immigration to Palestine, meanwhile, set British forces against militant Zionists, particularly as Nazi plans for European Jewry became clear. After World War II, unable to control the situation, Britain gave the problem to the newly formed United Nations, which voted to create 2 states in Palestine, one for Jews and one for Arabs. The partition plan, which gave 57% of the territory to the Jews, who owned only 7% of the land and made up just 35% of the population, was rejected by the Palestinians but accepted by Zionist leaders as a practical first step to a larger state in all of Palestine. In May 1948, Israel proclaimed its birth, and in defeating the invading Arab armies extended its control to 77% of Palestine. In the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel captured what remained: the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. UN resolutions 242 and 338 called on Israel to withdraw from these occupied territories. Instead, Israel has allowed and promoted Jewish settlements on them and annexed Greater Jerusalem. Currently, 230,000 Jews have settled on Palestinian land seized in 1967. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians displaced or forced from their home in 1948 and 1967 still live in refugee camps in surrounding countries and in Palestine itself, despite the call for reparations and compensation. UN General Assembly Resolution 1943, the third, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, with representatives from a number of resistance organizations and other groups, serves as a government in exile for Palestinians. Its legislative body, the Palestine National Council, has moved away from earlier calls for the abolition of the Zionist state and now recognizes Israel's existence and seeks a two-state solution, with an independent Palestine to be created in the occupied territories. In December 1967, spontaneous uprising called the Intifada broke out in the territories, reflecting Palestinian frustration with continued Israeli occupation. In its various forms and with various levels of intensity, the Intifada continues despite harsh Israeli measures to end it. Address all correspondence to Joe Sacco in care of the publisher. Palestine. Wow. 1993. 1993. Fantastic read. Apologies about breaking this up into two-part reading. The camera cut off on it. But a fantastic read. Good historical context for us to see what was going on 30 years ago, more than that, 32 years ago, because he was there in 1991, 1992. This was published in 1993, so it took a couple of years to get to the publishing stage of this thing, right? So 23 years ago, 24 years ago, that's what was taking place in Palestine. All right, incredible.